Good morning and welcome to the January 30th, 2025 meeting of the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality. It is 9:34 a.m. I'm joined by my colleagues here and General Counsel Mary Smith and our Public Interest Counsel Aaron Arthur, and I will not forget OPIC today. For each item that argument or discussion is loud, we will inform parties in the public of time limits for their discussion. Registration closed at 9:30, but if you would like to address the commission on a particular item, please either visit a registration table if you're in person, or if you are on the webinar, email agenda@tcq.texas.gov with your name, affiliation, and the item that you would like to comment on. We will do our best to accommodate the request. For those making presentations, please wait to begin your presentation until I have asked you to begin speaking. Apparently I'm the boss these days. And please check to make sure that your line is unmuted before proceeding. Mary, next item, please.
Okay, our first item today is the consideration of the ALJ's proposal for decision and proposed order concerning the application by the City of Kyle for new TIFDES permit number WQ0011041002. The order of presentation. The applicant, City of Kyle, should go first, followed by the protestant, San Marcos River Foundation, then the ED and OPIC. The applicant, protestant, ED, and OPIC will each have an oral argument time limit of 5 minutes, and the applicant may save time for rebuttal as it bears the burden of proving the application. So with that, we'll call the applicant to the podium. And if you would make sure that the button is pressed and you have a green light.
Thank you. Good morning. This is Lauren Kalishek with Lloyd Gosling, representing the City of Kyle. With me today are Robert DeFreitas, the City Division Manager for the Wastewater Treatment Plant, and Amy Alcorn-Reed, the City Attorney. Also my co-counsel, Catherine Bibby, and Jake Steiner with me today as well. So we certainly are very happy to be here before you, Commissioners and General Counsel, in support of the PFD that's been issued on the city's application. We are in full support. I think as you have seen in the PFD, the judges determined that the city met its burden of proof with respect to the 3 issues that were referred for hearing. Those issues were whether or not the applicant or the draft permit is consistent with water quality standards, whether or not the draft permit meets anti-degradation requirements, and whether or not the draft permit should be revised based on compliance history. On all 3 of those issues, the ALJs determined that there was no need to make any revisions to the draft permit, and they're recommending issuance as proposed by the Executive Director. So we are in full support of all of those recommendations by the ALJs. Don't have any requests for any changes to the PFD or the draft order before you, and I'd like to reserve the remainder of my time for rebuttal, unless there are any questions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Protestant.
Hi, good morning. My name is Victoria Rose, and I'm here today on behalf of the San Marcos River Foundation, fondly known as SMRF, and we have their Executive Director, Virginia Parker, here today as well. And I'm here to ask that you deny the City of Kyle's application for the renewal and major amendment to expand the city's wastewater discharge into Plum Creek to 12 million gallons per day. And that's because upstream of the discharge, the water in Plum Creek is incredibly beautiful. It meanders slowly through a city park. The water is clear, naturally low in nutrients, naturally high in dissolved oxygen, and most importantly, its waters do not smell of treated sewage. Unfortunately, downstream of the outfall is a different story. Below the city's outfall, Plum Creek has a strong smell of effluent, high concentrations of nutrients, shifts in the macroinvertebrate community that are consistent with pollution, and the Texas surface water quality monitoring data from below the outfall shows that dissolved oxygen concentrations fall below, every now and then, the 5 milligram per liter criteria set to protect aquatic life. And while the final phase of the draft permit certainly will improve the water quality of the effluent discharged at the outfall, it is not enough to protect Plum Creek's water quality consistent with the Clean Water Act and applicable regulations, and it's certainly not enough to protect Plum Creek from the city's history of permit violations during plant expansions. And at the contested case hearing, SMRF provided evidence that the pollution caused by the draft permit will continue these problems in Plum Creek. It will continue to depress dissolved oxygen concentrations in Plum Creek, to impact algal growth in Plum Creek, and to impact Plum Creek's macroinvertebrate community in ways that violate the Texas Surface Water Quality Standards anti-degradation rules. And this is based on water quality data and field observations that were made by a scientist with years and years and years of experience studying nutrient pollution in streams in the southern U.S. SMRF also provided evidence from a professional engineer that the Qualtex model relied upon by TCEQ staff predicted post-discharge dissolved oxygen concentrations that violated applicable dissolved oxygen standards upstream of the outfall, and that even though these values occurred upstream of the outfall, they're still appropriate to consider because of the way dispersion works in the creek to allow the impacts to go upstream. On the other hand, the City of Kyle provided testimony from a biologist who did not tell the truth about following the procedures in the Surface Water Quality Monitoring Program to make her assessments about the draft permit. And she did not tell the truth about those same procedures when making criticisms of SMRF's witness. And lastly, she consistently misrepresented and conflated the Tier 1 and Tier 2 anti-degradation standards. From the city, we also heard testimony from an engineer about the concentrations of phosphorus in Plum Creek due to the city's discharge. But that same engineer was so unfamiliar with the draft permit that he included the wrong concentration in his pre-filed testimony, and when given an opportunity to correct the mistake during questioning at the contested case hearing, quadrupled down on that mistake in the hearing. Hardly a reliable set of witnesses to base a PFD on. We also heard evidence from TCEQ, and from the evidence presented by the executive director, we learned of several issues with TCEQ's analysis of the draft permit, including that TCEQ did not evaluate whether the draft permit would meet the Tier 2 anti-degradation standard for dissolved oxygen. The permit reviewer testified that he solely relied on the recommendations of the dissolved oxygen modeler to make his Tier 2 recommendations. But the dissolved oxygen modeler testified that she never made any recommendations about whether the draft permit met the Tier 2 standard. This leaves a gaping hole in TCEQ's analysis of the draft permit that will impact a stream important to many. To conclude for today you are presented with an opportunity to protect and take steps to restore water quality in Plum Creek for all the Texans who recreate and own land near and downstream of the city's wastewater treatment plant, and to protect Texas's natural heritage for future generations in line with the Clean Water Act, Texas Water Code, and TCEQ regulations. This is an important opportunity, and it doesn't come up very often. And as fellow Texan and President George W. Bush reminded us on an Earth Day address in 2002, we have a duty in our country to make sure our land is preserved, our air is clean, our water is pure, and our parks are accessible. So this morning, I ask that you take the opportunity to fulfill our duty to protect water quality in Plum Creek by setting aside the PFD from the ALJs and the misdirections and unsubstantiated statements from the city and executive director to correctly apply the law and facts in this case, to deny the city of Kyle's application and find that the applicant did not meet its burden. Thank you.
Thank you, Victoria. We'll hear from the executive director next.
Good morning, Chairwoman, General Counsel, Commissioners, and Public Interest Counsel. For the record, I am Fernando Salas Martinez of the Environmental Law Division. With me today is Sonia Bouya and Greg Easley of the Water Quality Division, as well as Robert Sadler of the Office of Water. The Executive Director agrees with the Administrative Law Judge's findings of fact and conclusions of law as referenced in the proposal for a decision on 3 referred issues. The ALJs, the Honorable Caterina D'Angelo and Susan Rodriguez, found that the draft permit is adequately protective of water quality, wildlife, and protestants, members, and families' health in accordance with the applicable regulations, including Texas Surface Water Quality Standards. That the draft permit complies with the applicable anti-degradation requirements and adequately protects existing uses. And the draft permit should not be altered or denied based on the state's compliance history. The ALJs also found that the prima facie demonstration, which was established through the filing of the application, other sufficient supporting documentation in the administrative record, and the ED's draft permit and preliminary decision was not rebutted by the protestant. The ALJs concluded that the city met its burden of proving that the draft permit complies with all applicable legal and technical requirements, and if issued, the draft permit would protect human health and safety, the environment, and the physical property. Likewise, the Executive Director disagrees with the protestant's exceptions to the PFD. The Executive Director agrees with the ALJ's decision to adopt the ED's and city's exceptions to the PFD in final order, and the ALJ's decision not to adopt the protestant's exceptions, which reiterated arguments made at the hearing on the merits and in written closing briefs, which were addressed at length in the ALJ's PFD. The Executive Director respectfully suggests that the Commission deny both the protestant's exceptions and issue the permit as drafted. Thank you, and we're available for any questions.
Thank you. Do you go by Nando or Fernando?
Either is fine.
Which do you prefer?
Fernando is great.
Fernando. Thank you, Fernando. OPIC, next please. Jessica?
Chairwoman, Commissioners, Executive Directors, Attorney, and staff. For the record, I'm Jessica Anderson with the Office of Public Interest Counsel. We participated in the hearing, evaluated the evidence and arguments presented, and concluded that, in agreement with the proposal for decision, a preponderance of evidence in the record shows the application and draft permit comply with applicable statutory and regulatory requirements on the issues referred to at the hearing by the Commission. The weight of evidence demonstrates that the draft permit is protective of water quality, wildlife, and protestants' members and their families' health. OPIC is persuaded that if applicant meets the effluent limits in the draft permit, then the applicable water quality criteria should be met and the uses of the receiving waters should be protected. OPIC is in agreement with the ALJs that, despite protestants' argument to the contrary, there is not a sufficient basis to reject the ED's calibrated Qualtex model, or that using an uncalibrated model is an appropriate or practicable solution. Regarding protestants' assertion that the draft permit will fail to maintain Plum Creek in an aesthetically attractive condition and negatively impact wildlife, the ALJs found this argument unpersuasive, and OPIC agrees. The preponderance of the credible evidence shows that the draft permit complies with TCEQ's anti-degradation policy, which generally requires that existing uses and water quality sufficient to protect those uses must not be degraded. The record indicates that the ED performed the required Tier 1 and 2 anti-degradation reviews, and based on the preponderant evidence, OPIC concurs with the conclusion that the proposed discharge will comply with the applicable anti-degradation requirements. Protestant argued that EPA's regulations and guidance indicate that the draft permit violates TCEQ's anti-degradation review requirements. However, we are in agreement with the ALJs that protestants' argument is not persuasive because EPA has approved not only the Texas Surface Water Quality Standards, but also the implementation procedures through which those standards are implemented. OPIC further concludes that applicants' compliance history does not warrant denying or altering the terms of the draft permit. Nothing in the record indicates that the city has a recurring pattern of conduct that demonstrates a consistent disregard for the regulatory process. On the contrary, the record shows that the city's efforts to improve compliance are succeeding. The city has invested in corrective measures, capital projects, and increased staffing to improve the performance and service of this facility. For these reasons, we believe that the City of Kyle has met its burden of proof with respect to each of these referred issues, and therefore the ALJ's proposal for decision should be adopted. Thank you, and we are available for any questions.
Thank you, Jessica. Appreciate it. I believe the applicant has 3 minutes and 33 seconds left for rebuttal.
Thank you. I'll just touch briefly on some of the points that Ms. Rose raised. First, with respect to the quality of Plum Creek, I would certainly point you to the extensive discussion in the PFD with respect to this issue and the summary of the evidence presented by the protestants in light of a summary of the evidence that was presented by the city and by the executive director. And I would point you specifically to page 39 of the proposal for decision, where the ALJs summarized that the testimony provided by protestants' expert is really incongruent with the realities of Plum Creek. They note in the PFD that expert acknowledged that during his visits to Plum Creek, above and below the outfall, he did not observe excessive algal growth already with the current discharge. And we know, and it's discussed in the PFD extensively, that a phosphorus limit, 0.5 milligrams per liter, is going to be added to the discharge for increased flows, which will actually improve water quality in the creek. And I think that was widely accepted and acknowledged by everyone that was as a party to the hearing for the evidence that was presented by the city and by the executive director. And ultimately, the ALJs conclude that protestant failed to present evidence to show how adding a TP limit of 0.5 to the final two phases, which its witnesses agree will lower TP concentrations from the current level in the receiving stream, will lead to more algal growth than is present with no TP limit in place. That's really the crux of the issue here. So certainly the points that Ms. Rose raised were considered by the ALJs in detail and are discussed in the PFD. And at the end of the day, if you look at the preponderance of the evidence in total, the executive director, public interest counsel, and the ALJs all agree that the city met its burden of proof and the record supports issuance of the permit. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Lauren, for changing. A lot to think about. Let's have a discussion. Before us, for our consideration, is an application by the City of Kyle for an amendment to its wastewater discharge permit to increase its wastewater discharge to an annual average flow of 12 million gallons per day. In my review of this matter, I find that the record supports the ALJ's determination that the draft permit is protective of water quality and will not cause degradation of receiving waters. ALJs correctly applied applicable law, including TCEQ's Texas Surface Water Quality Standards Implementation Procedures and Standard Operating Procedures. I do not find that the ALJs erred in relying on TCEQ's calibrated Qualtex modeling, especially given the testimony and evidence supporting the Qualtex modeling results. I agree with the LAJ's determination that the draft permit effluent limits, including the 0.5 total phosphorus limit, will protect against excessive algae growth and ensure that the receiving waters meet aesthetic criteria. With respect to the applicant's compliance history, the record shows an improvement since the applicant acquired the facility, and the record does not demonstrate the need for additional provisions or action to ensure future compliance with TCEQ regulations. So in conclusion, I would issue the permit. Colleagues, what do you think?
Thank you for your thoughts, Chairwoman. I'm in agreement with you, and I think OPIC's position statement on this matter completely covered my thoughts on it. I'm in agreement with them.
I'm also in agreement.
Thank you. I believe that leaves us with a few housekeeping matters. I agree with the various friendly amendments proposed by the ED and their exceptions and agreed to by the ALJs, although I would renumber the new provisions as the Commission has done in the past by adding an A and a B to new findings of fact and conclusions of law rather than inserting and renumbering. Good? I've also reviewed the ED's response to comments and would propose that we adopt that document. Given that agreement, I can make a motion. I move that we, 1, adopt the ALJ's proposed order as revised by the ALJ's letter dated November 19th, 2024 with the following modifications. at the ALJ's new findings of fact numbers 56 and 57, but renumber them as findings of fact number 55A and 55B as follows. Finding of fact number 55A, guidance for determining water bodies that exceed fishable, swimmable quality that are found in the IPs. Findings of fact number 55B, Tier 2 anti-degradation reviews generally apply to water bodies that have existed, designated, or presumed uses of primary or secondary contact, recreation, or intermediate, high, or exceptional aquatic life waters. At the ALJ's new findings of fact number 60, but renumbered as finding of fact number 57A as follows. Finding of fact number 57A, the ED's Tier 1 and Tier 2 anti-degradation reviews found that existing uses, including those of aquatic and terrestrial wildlife, will be maintained. With these numbering changes, no additional renumbering is necessary. These changes are made to correctly state that the regulatory framework established the TCEQ wastewater permitting program and to make clarifying and typographical corrections. 2, approve the issuance of the ED's draft permit, and 3, adopt the ED's response to comments.
Can I make, really quickly, I think on finding of fact 55B, or I'm sorry, 55A, there was a that inserted that was different than the ALJ's, and I'm presuming that was misspoken.
No, I think that was misspoken.
Okay, and then, yeah, and on 55B, this was a difference again between the ALJ's and you had said or instead of and, but I'm presuming you mean to go with the ALJ version.
Yes, thank you, Mary. Thank you for keeping me legal here.
I second that clarified motion.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. The motion passes. Thank you. Thank y'all very much. Let's go to item number 2. Give everyone a chance to get settled.
Item number 2 is the consideration of the application by the Lower Valley Water District for new TIFD's permit number WQ 00162960001. The parties have been notified that the commissioners will not take oral argument, but may ask questions.
Thank you for being here today. Before us, we have an application for a new TIFD's permit, which would discharge up to 900,000 gallons per day of treated domestic wastewater in its final phase. For these types of applications, the Commission considers a 2-step analysis. First, we determine whether the hearing requester is an affected person. If there are affected hearing requesters, then we consider whether the affected person raised issues in their hearing requests that are referable to SOA. So let's go to the effectiveness determination. The Commission received timely hearing requests from numerous individuals in one group. I'll begin with my thoughts on effectiveness, basically which individuals and groups are entitled to a contested case hearing at SOA. To be considered an affected person, the requester must explain how they will be affected by the application in a way that is not common to members of the general public. The hearing requester must also file both timely comments in the hearing request that identifies both their personal interest and the concerns that they have. Finally, the identified concerns must be within the Commission's jurisdiction to address in the authorization. Turning to the individual hearing requesters first, I agree with the ED and OPIC that we should first grant the hearing request of Magda Flores, Rosemary Gallo Abatia, Thomas Hausler, Maria Mendoza, Angel Ornelas, Rafael Ramirez, and Anna Sanchez. Taking into consideration the proposed volume of the discharge, the issues that these individuals raise in their hearing request and their proximity to the proposed discharge point and the discharge route, I believe that they have shown that they may be personally affected by this application in a manner that is not common to the general public. I would recommend that we deny the hearing request for Eleuterio and Maria Sanchez These requesters are approximately 1.16 miles away from the facility and live some distance from the discharge route. They raise general concerns about odors and water quality. I would not gather from their hearing request how they would be impacted differently than the general public, however. So I would depart from ED and OPIC's recommendations and deny their hearing requests. For this group, there are additional requirements for the commission to review, including whether the group has identified a member who is affected in their own right, whether the purpose of the group is germane to the concerns of the request, and whether the hearing may be maintained without individual members of the group's participation. Here, I do agree with ED and OPIC that the Fabens Take Charge group meets these requirements and should be granted a hearing. The group filed several timely comments in hearing requests, and its members include some of the individual requestors that I would find affected in their own rights. Therefore, I recommend granting Fabens Take Charge group's hearing request. I'll stop there and see where my colleagues have landed on effectiveness. Bobby?
I'm in agreement.
Katarina?
Yeah, so agree.
Excellent, thank you. Let's talk about issues for reconsideration. Moving to the second part on our analysis on issues, the affected persons raise relevant and material issues concerning water quality, odor, human health, and compliance history of the applicant and operator. These are all relevant and material issues that the commission routinely refers to SOA. The hearing requesters also raised a number of concerns regarding the facility siting. I refer this issue on this point, but only to the extent that the concerns relate to the commission's limited siting authority in 30 Texas Administrative Code Section 309.13. Finally, the Fabens Take Charge group recommends an issue related to Chapter 217's design criteria requirements. I don't believe that this issue was fully raised during the comment period, but even if it was, Chapter 217 standards apply to the engineering work that is completed after a permit is issued, and the effluent parameters are known rather than standards for the development of the permit. Therefore, I do not believe this issue is one that should be referred to SOA. I'll stop there and gather my colleagues' thoughts. Bobby?
I think I identified the same three issues.
See it the same way.
Great. Finally, I'd recommend an 180-day hearing duration. We're all in agreement here. I'll entertain a motion.
I have a motion. We'll hit all those points. I move that we grant the hearing requests of the Fabens Take Charge group, Magda Flores, Rosa Maria Gallo Avicia, Thomas Hausler, Maria Mendoza, Angel Ornelas, Rafael Ramirez, and Ana Sanchez. We further move that we deny the hearing requests of Eleuterio and Maria Sanchez, and that we refer the application to SOA for a contested case hearing on the following issues. Issue 1, whether the draft permit is protective of water quality in the receiving waters in accordance with applicable regulations, including the Chapter 307 Texas Surface Water Quality Standards. Issue 2, whether the draft permit adequately protects against nuisance odors and complies with applicable siting requirements in accordance with 30 Texas Administrative Code, Section 309.13. And Issue 3, whether the applicant or operator's compliance history raises any issues regarding the applicant or operator's ability to comply with the material terms of the permit that warrant denying or altering the terms of the draft permit. And finally, move that we set a maximum hearing duration of 180 days from the date of the preliminary hearing until the proposal for decision is issued.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Motion passes. You have a much better accent than I do.
You did a good job on that, Commissioner Kinnick.
More practice.
Mary, item number 3, please. Thank y'all.
Item number 3 is the consideration of the application by Crystal Clear's Special Utility District for approval to levy an amended impact fee. The parties have been notified that the commissioners will not take oral argument but may ask questions, and those who have signed in will be noted for the record.
Thank you for being here. Before us, we have an application by Crystal Clear Special Utility District to levy an amended impact fee within its service area. We have hearing requests that were submitted by Joseph Benavides and Austin Mark Ventures, LLC, who both claim that they own property that they plan to develop within Crystal Clear's service area. After reviewing the hearing request, I agreed with ED and OPIC that both hearing requestors would be affected by the proposed impact fee in a manner different than the general public, and I recommend granting their hearing requests. Bobby?
I also agree.
I also agree.
Excellent. Do I have a motion?
I move that we grant the hearing requests of Joseph Benavides and Austin Mark Ventures LLC and refer the matter to SOA for contested case hearing on the application.
Second motion.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. Mary, let's call the items forward, please. Give y'all a second to get situated.
Item number 4 is the consideration for adoption of the new air quality standard permit for natural gas electric generating units. And the executive director's staff is here to present this item.
Good morning.
Good morning, Chairwoman, Commissioners, General Counsel, and Public Interest Counsel. On behalf of the Executive Director, I am Stephanie Heath with the Air Permits Division. With me is Michael Partey of the Air Permits Division, and attending virtually is Booker Harrison with the Environmental Law Division. Also available for questions is Sam Short, Deputy Director of the Air Permits Division. For your consideration today is the adoption of the new non-rural air quality standard permit for natural gas electric generating units, or EGUs. Authorized under Texas Health and Safety Code, Section 382.05195, Standard Permit, and 30 Texas Administrative Code, Chapter 116, Subchapter F, Standard Permits. The new non-rural standard permit authorizes natural gas EGUs that generate electricity for use by the owner or operator and/or generate electricity to be sold to the electric grid. It provides applicants with more flexibility than allowed under permit by rule, or PBR, when seeking authorization of natural gas EGUs at a site, and serves as an alternative option to the existing non-rural air quality standard permit for EGUs. Notice of the proposed standard permit was published in the June 28, 2024 issue of the Texas Register. A public meeting was held on July 30, 2024. The public comment period closed at midnight on July 30, 2024. The rule team received numerous public comments during the public comment period. Commenters generally expressed support for the new standard permit, while one commenter expressed concern about the usefulness of the new standard permit, specifically the limitations with the operational and emission limits, and the record-keeping and monitoring requirements. However, no revisions were made to the draft standard permit in response to the comments received. In conclusion, staff respectfully recommends adoption of this new standard permit. Additionally, staff requests authorization to make non-substantive revisions necessary to comply with the Texas Register publication requirements. Thank you. We are available to answer any questions.
Thank you, Stephanie. I appreciate you. Do we have anyone signed up for this item?
No one has signed in on this one.
Okay. Yes.
What size units are these?
Thank you for your question. The size depends on the engine. It's not necessarily the size of the engine. We're looking at the emissions for the engine. So they can be different size engines that would qualify for the standard permit.
And with the standard permit and that being a different path than like permit by rule, this should expedite some of them, right?
It would. So our standard permit allows for 45 days to issue the project. We are issuing standard permits around 20 days.
Okay. Good job. Thanks.
Yeah. Bobby?
No questions, thank you.
Okay.
Good morning, Chairwoman, Commissioners, General Counsel, and Executive Director. My name is Eli Martinez. I'm with the Office of Public Interest Counsel, for the record. We've reviewed the proposed standard permit for natural gas electric generating units and agree that it serves the public interest in providing operational flexibility to those applicants who generate electricity and sell to the grid. We have no issues with the protectiveness review that was undertaken to ensure utilization of best available control technology and protectiveness of human health when the terms of the permit are properly adhered to. Additionally, the proposed permit underwent an extended public comment period. A public meeting was held, a public involvement plan to assess and determine public participation was created, and a plain language summary was also made available to the public. Notice of the proposed standard permit was published in both English and Spanish in the Austin, Dallas, and Houston areas, and made available on TCEQ's website. A plain language summary and the executive summary were also provided in English and Spanish on TCEQ's website. And additionally, the public was provided an opportunity to request additional communication accommodations, including live translation services for the public meeting. We agree with the disposition of the comments that were received, and for these reasons, we support adoption. Thank you. We're available for any questions.
Thank you, Vic. Well, colleagues, after reviewing the backup materials and the comments provided in this matter, I agree with the ED that this new standard permit is appropriate and allows natural gas electric generating unit facilities greater operational flexibility than allowed under existing authorizations. Air quality analysis performed by the ED staff demonstrates that the standard permit is protective of human health and the environment. I also believe that the standard permit complies with all statutory and regulatory requirements, and the ED adequately responded to all substantive comments submitted during the comment period. So I would support the adoption of this standard permit. Friends?
I'm in agreement. I appreciate those comments, and I also want to thank the public entities who provided comment on this. I think the ED's response was very appropriate. I appreciate the limitations or the limits on the usefulness of this particular standard permit for some of the use cases that we heard about from out in industry. But it, in my view, I think is a valuable additional tool for applicants in the public to take advantage of. There's a number of other pathways if this won't address particular circumstances, but hearing from staff, this is a very clear pathway that gives the public some assurance on protectiveness that lets the authorizations move a little quicker. And I'm very much in support of that, ready to move forward today. Thank you.
Well said.
I'm supportive as well. Thank you for everyone's work on this.
Excellent. Do I have a motion?
I would move that we adopt the new air quality standard permit for natural gas electric generating units as recommended by the executive director and issue the ED's proposed order.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. Thank y'all very much. Let's go to item 5, please.
I'll give everybody a minute to get up here before I actually call the caption.
Item number 5 is the consideration for publication and solicitation of public comment on 5 draft total maximum daily loads for indicator bacteria in the Mustang, Persimmon, and New Bayou watershed of the Bays and Estuaries Basin in Brazoria and Fort Bend counties. The executive director staff is here to present this matter.
Good morning.
Good morning, Chairwoman, Commissioners, General Counsel, and Public Interest Counsel. Thank you. Again, good morning, Chairwoman, Commissioners, General Counsel, and Public Interest Counsel. For the record, I am Nicole Hall with the Water Quality Planning Division in the Office of Water. With me virtually today are Wyatt Eason with the Total Maximum Daily Load Program and Aubrey Kowalka with the Environmental Law Division. Today, the Executive Director is requesting the release for public comment of 5 total maximum daily loads for indicator bacteria in the Mustang, Persimmon, and New Bayous watershed. The TMDLs covered 5 assessment units and 3 water bodies within Brazoria and Fort Bend counties. The development of this document included an active public participation effort and balanced stakeholder group coordinated by TCEQ and the Houston-Galveston Area Council. A stakeholder group was formed with balanced representation of all interested parties who were tasked with providing input on the TMDL document. The success of this project is due to the collaborative effort of the individuals and organizations that put in the time to develop the document to improve water quality in their community. The executive director respectfully requests approval to publish the total maximum daily loads for public comment. Permission is also requested to make non-substantive and clerical corrections before providing the documents for public notice if needed. Thank you, and we are available to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you, Nicole. Any questions, comments? Do we have anyone signed up on this item?
No one is signed in.
Garrett?
Good morning, Chairwoman and Commissioners. For the record, I'm Garrett Arthur, TCEQ Public Interest Counsel. OPIC supports approval to publish and solicit public comment on 5 draft TMDLs for indicator bacteria in the Mustang, Persimmon, and New Bayous watersheds.
Wonderful. Thank you, Garrett. Colleagues, I appreciate the stakeholders' input on this, and I'm thankful to the Houston-Galveston Area Council for their help in facilitating the public participation in developing these TMDLs. I appreciate staff's work in preparing these TMDLs, and I'm ready to put them out for comment. Any questions, comments?
No comments, just want to echo those sentiments of gratitude to both the staff but also the stakeholders out there. And I know that this is an item where the implementation plan will be coming, so that stakeholder effort is all the more effort for that, is all the more important for that second stretch. So thank you for that.
With the additional item.
Do I have a motion?
I move that we approve the publication of and solicitation of public comment on 5 draft total maximum daily loads for indicator bacteria in the Mustang, Persimmon, and New Bayous watershed of the Bays and Estuaries Basin in Brazoria and Fort Bend counties as recommended by the Executive Director.
Second motion.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. Thank you. Item number 6, please.
Items 6 and 7 are for the consideration for publication and solicitation of public comment on 1 draft total maximum daily load for indicator bacteria in the Panache Park of the Bays and Estuaries Basin in Nueces County, and the draft implementation plan for 7 total maximum daily loads for indicator bacteria in the Corpus Christi region of the Bays and Estuaries Basin in Nueces County. And the executive director's staff is here to present these items.
Hello, Chairwoman, Commissioners, General Counsel, and Public Interest Counsel. For the record, I am Nicole Hall with the Water Quality Planning Division in the Office of Water. With me virtually today are Wyatt Eason with the Total Maximum Daily Load Program and Aubrey Walaka with the Environmental Law Division. Today, the Executive Director is requesting to release 1 implementation plan and 1 TMDL document for public comment. Item number 6 is for 1 draft total maximum daily load for indicator bacteria in Ponish Park. The Ponish Park TMDL covers 1 assessment unit and 1 water body within Nueces County. Item number 7 is for the draft implementation plan for 7 total maximum daily loads for indicator bacteria in the Corpus Christi region. The activities within this implementation plan target 7 assessment units and 4 water bodies within Nueces County. The development of these documents included an active public participation effort and balanced stakeholder groups coordinated by TCEQ and Texas A&M University Corpus Christi. A stakeholder group was formed with balanced representation of all interested parties for each project watershed who were tasked with providing input on the implementation plan and TMDL document. The success of these projects is due to the collaborative efforts of the individuals and organizations who put in the time to develop the documents and improve water quality in their communities. The Executive Director respectfully requests approval to publish the implementation plan and TMDL document for public comment. Permission is also requested to make non-substantive and clerical corrections before providing the documents for public notice if needed. Thank you, and we are available to answer any questions that you have.
Thanks, Nicole. Any questions or comments?
One question about the implementation plan is the inclusion and maintenance of pet waste stations with bags, is that one of the items in the I-plan?
Yes, I'm sure that's in there somewhere. I know there's a whole management measure about pet waste. 2 of the watersheds in the I-plan are very urban, so that is a big source of bacteria in urban areas.
Much appreciated. Thank you.
Do we have anyone signed up at this time?
No one has signed in on these.
Garrett?
OPIC supports approval to publish and solicit public comment on 1 draft TMDL for indicator bacteria in Ponish Park and 1 draft implementation plan for 7 TMDLs for indicator bacteria in the Corpus Christi region.
Excellent, thank you. Let me start with the fact that I am so appreciative of of all the work from our staff, our contractors, stakeholders that have gone into developing these TMDL and the I-Plan. They are important steps for improving water quality in several areas of Nueces County, and I believe that it's appropriate to move forward with the publication of these items to gather the public's input on them. Friends?
I agree, and I'm really pleased to be able to report that I had a member of my staff make an impromptu field visit to one of the watersheds in these particular TMDLs before us, and noted there's a pet waste station. Oh, this is all connected and related, where these are very important, sometimes long-running conversations and cycles of activity that we take place in and engage in. And it was a good reminder for me, for my office, how real and interconnected these actions really are for Texans that are out in our state every day. So thank you all very, very much. And thank you again to those stakeholders who helped develop the I-Plan. I know an implementation plan will come for that other watershed before us in these two items, but that's a very different body of land and water cycle than what the other watershed with the implementation plan before us. So appreciate, once again, just all of staff's work and all the volunteer efforts that represents.
Thank you. Well said.
I appreciate your bringing attention to the pet waste stations. My dog Loki Wiener is a strong supporter of pet waste stations, as is his owner.
He fill out a official witness card.
Yes, he's paws up for that.
Paws up.
Yeah.
Excellent. Do we have a motion?
I move we approve the publication and solicitation of public comment on one draft total maximum daily load for indicator bacteria in Ponish Park of the Bays and Estuaries Basin in Nueces County, and the draft implementation plan for 7 total maximum daily loads for indicator bacteria in the Corpus Christi region of the Bays and Estuaries Basin in Nueces County, as recommended by the Executive Director.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you, Nicole. Great hair today.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, let's go through items 8 to 22.
That's great.
Give our enforcement folks a moment to get up here to the table. So that takes us to our enforcement docket, items 8 through 22. The executive director staff are here to present these items.
Good morning, Chairwoman, Commissioners, General Counsel, and Public Interest Counsel. For the record, my name is Michael Parrish of the Enforcement Division. And with me today are Amy Sinnemeyer and Melissa Cordell, also of the Enforcement Division, and Gitanjali Yadav of the Litigation Division, representing the Executive Director. Pending before you are items 8 through 22. Total assessed administrative penalties are $351,294, with $40,116 deferred, $58,781 applied towards supplemental environmental projects, and $252,397 to the general revenue. We respectfully request approval of these items and are available to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you so much. Any questions, comments?
This time.
Do we have anyone signed up on these items?
On 13 and 10, we have people available if the commission has questions, but nobody's asked to address the commission.
Do you have any questions? Right, Garrett?
Public has reviewed each of these enforcement items, and we support adoption of all the orders presented by ED staff.
Thank you so much. Colleagues, I'm generally ready to adopt items 8 through 14 and 16 through 22. However, item number 15 caught my eye. There are 2 provisions in that order that require Unclean Texas LLC to comply after an unauthorized discharge of sand waste from a sand settling tank at this facility. Ordering provision number 2A would require the respondent to immediately cease discharging sand waste from the sand settling tank. Ordering provision 2IB will require the respondent to begin capturing the sand waste from the sand settling tank within 180 days. I don't understand how these provisions can work together. How respondent both can immediately cease the discharge of the sand waste, but then has 180 days to begin capturing the sand waste from the sand settling tank. I was wondering if the ED could shed some light on these ordering provisions and how they work together.
Good morning, I'm Melissa Cordell, the Enforcement Division. So we do work with the respondents in these cases to determine how the corrective actions can be, can apply to the situation and what the timing would be. We do rely also on them to fulfill these corrective actions once they've been agreed to, as they have been in this particular case with these timings. We don't dictate how they are going to achieve those particular items, but our understanding is that yes, they should be cease the discharge, but then also determine what's the best method to either they need to repair or replace the tank, the sand settling tank, and to ensure that that's done appropriately. Does that help?
Colleagues?
I appreciate you asking the question because I've noted the same question in my mind, and I hear the answer, and I think I understand that there is a difference in staff's thinking in terms of the ceasing the discharge. That must be immediate, there's no question there. But as to what a remedy may be and how to resolve bring actions back into compliance, there may be a path that requires some time, and so staff wanted to accommodate and allow for that in the agreed order. I share the chairwoman's confusion, reading it from a distance, how to distinguish those two things, and I think my concern would be, would we find ourselves frustrated if on day 2 through 179, if they did not immediately cease discharge and pointed to the 180-day limit that they had to get into compliance, to say, well, we've still got time. Does that render the immediate requirement moot or toothless in some way? And I'm supportive of the suggested, pardon if I'm leaping to conclusions, but by suggesting you be ready to vote on all the items, but for that one, I'd be supportive of a remand if adjusting that or clarifying it to ensure there's no potential misunderstanding. That would be a worthwhile improvement before finally approving that order.
Thank you, Bonnie.
Yeah, I appreciate both your comments. I also was a little confused about that, and I think it could probably just benefit from a little more polishing.
Yeah, I live by the mantra clear as kind, so let's send it back and clarify. Do I have a motion?
I move that we adopt items 8 through 14 and 16 through 22 as recommended today by the Executive Director, and remand item 15 to the Executive Director for further case development.
I second the motion.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
The motion passes. Thank y'all. We're on 23, Mary.
And item 23 is the consideration of the monthly enforcement report, and the executive director's staff is here to present this matter.
Good morning, Chairwoman, Commissioners, General Counsel, and Public Interest Counsel. My name is Amy Sedemeyer of the Enforcement Division, and with me are Melissa Cordell of the Enforcement Division and Gitanjali Yadav of the Litigation Division. We're here to present the monthly enforcement report for fiscal year 2025 through November. There were 216 effective administrative orders issued, and of those, 20 contained supplemental environmental projects. These orders assessed a total of $2,391,563 with a payable amount of $1,454,520. $595,016 are to be paid towards supplemental environmental projects. 3,795 notices of violation have been issued either through our field offices or review of self-reported data in our central office, and 364 enforcement action referrals have been received. There are 3,102 pending administrative orders with 1,478 cases that are on the backlog. 125 cases are pending at the Attorney General's office for representation in district court, and 0 judgments have been issued. 1,384 cases are being tracked for compliance. We're available to answer any questions you may have.
Excellent, thank you, Amy. Any questions or comments?
I wanted to ask about the backlog and just recognize and acknowledge and say thank you. Well done on getting us in the right direction on the comparison from where we were last year. I think that's tremendous given what heard some of the realities of where our staff resources versus the workload may sit. So what does that look like, please?
Yeah, so we are currently, as you mentioned, under where we were at this point last year. For this report in particular, we did note a slight uptick in the backlog number, largely due to some turnover in very significant senior staff that we had in the division. It's just impacted us a little bit, but we are recalibrating and putting as many resources that we can on it to make sure we can get back on track as quickly as possible. And that's just where we are right now. But we are working as hard as we can. Our staff are putting in many hours to try to get through these cases as quickly as possible, recognizing that timely enforcement is important.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you clarifying that.
Go ahead.
Thanks for your work.
No, I think the trajectory is going where we need it to go, and hopefully this session with our exceptional item request, we can get more resources, more staff, and really start to see some good clearing out of that backlog. But I very much appreciate all that y'all do.
Thank you.
Has anyone signed up for this item?
No one has signed in.
Garrett?
OPIC has no comment except to say that we appreciate staff's work and the report.
Excellent. As always, I too appreciate the work in putting this report together. Sometimes it feels like these reports are thankless, but these metrics are incredibly important to gauge where we are and if all of the new staff resources are working and doing what they should be, and it appears that they are. As well as all the work that underlies the numbers in the report. Colleagues, do you have anything else you'd like to add?
Just express my thanks.
There's no action necessary on this item, so Mary, would you call the next item?
Items 24 through 27 are for closed session.
Thanks, Amy.
The commission will meet in closed session in room CR 246 of the Texas Workforce Commission. Should we say 10:40, give people 10 minutes?
10 minutes.
10:40 as permitted by the Open Meetings Act, including Texas Government Code sections 551.071 and 074, to take up and consider the matters pursuant to those noticed in items 24 through 27.
Excellent. Thank y'all very much.
The commission met in room CR 246 of the Texas Workforce Commission for closed session from 10:47 until 11:12 a.m. on item numbers 24 and 27, as posted in notice pursuant to Texas Government Code Section 551074. No action was taken. This agenda stands adjourned. The time is 11:20.